Getting a life sentence is already a big enough deal. However, these individuals had some seriously weird reactions in court when the judge read out their life sentence.
Four defendants serve a term of life without parole. As to count four, for the offense of attempted murder, violation.
This reaction from a confessed killer was the last in a series of intense moments in this Hamilton County courtroom, and exactly what the victims' families asked for.
I have to deal with life without Portia, so he should deal with life without.
The courtroom in Cincinnati, Ohio was thick with tension as Jaleel Smith Riley stood before the judge. Police said he confessed to a brutal crime that left one young woman dead and her boyfriend permanently brain damaged. Portia Brooks had simply been sitting in her car with her boyfriend Aaron Martin when Smith Riley and two others approached them with robbery in mind. Martin, having no cash, was shot in the head on the spot, leaving him with severe and permanent brain injuries. Portia tried to escape, but Smith Riley fired again, and 3 days later she died from her injuries. In court, he appeared remorseful, head bowed, fidgeting nervously, but no amount of regret could undo the devastation. As Portia's mother took the stand to deliver her victim impact statement, her voice trembled with rage and grief. Her family had been destroyed. Her identity as a mother, her very existence, had been ripped apart. Smith Riley was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He would never be free again.
In the Superior Court of the State of California, in and for the County of San Diego, the people of the State of California, plaintiff versus Weldon K. McDavid, defendant. Case number SCN 363925, DA number OCD 980. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Weldon K. McDavid, guilty of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder.
Need to take a break.
Diana Lovejoy's case unfolded with its own twists and disbelief. She had once shared a life with her husband, Greg Mulvihill, in the seemingly calm suburbs of Carlsbad. But when their marriage fell apart and the court forced her to pay $120,000 and share custody of their son, something inside her broke. Diana plotted with her boyfriend, Weldon McDavid, to kill Greg. McDavid shot him in the torso, narrowly missing his heart. Greg survived, but the damage was immense. In court, Diana sat nervously, trying to maintain composure. Then came the verdict. The word guilty rang through the courtroom, and almost instantly, Diana fainted, collapsing against the defense table. Family members wept as medics rushed to help her. Though it was dramatic, the doctors later revealed that she had simply fainted from the shock. McDavid, the one who pulled the trigger, received 50 years to life. Diana was sentenced to 26 years to life. Her plan had failed. Instead of ending Greg's life, she had destroyed her own.
In Solon Township, that you're both charged with what they call felony murder, while in the perpetration or attempted perpetration of child abuse in the first degree, they're alleging that you murdered one Mary Welch. That is a charge called homicide felony murder. It is life without parole. It requires a DNA sample to be taken upon arrest, which is often like a cotton swab or in the inside of your cheek. The second offense that you're both charged with is called child abuse in the first degree, where they're alleging you knowingly or intentionally caused serious physical harm to a child. They're talking about this Mary Welch. It is a felony, possible penalty of up to life imprisonment, or any term of years less than life. Now those are the two separate felony charges.
In Michigan, another tragedy shocked the public, this time involving a 10-month-old baby girl. Seth Welch and Tatiana Fusari were known in their Cedar Springs community as religious and off-the-grid farmers. But when their daughter Mary was found dead in her crib, the truth came to light. Mary had died from severe malnutrition and dehydration. The couple admitted they had noticed she was thin, but did not take her to a doctor due to their distrust of medicine and the government. Instead of seeking help, Seth waited an hour and a half after finding her lifeless body before calling 911, only after consulting his lawyer first. When asked by dispatchers why he had waited so long, his response was disturbingly calm. He described how they had put Mary to bed around 3 p.m. the previous day and hadn't checked on her until the next morning. The autopsy confirmed the worst. She had died from neglect. In court, the charges were laid out coldly: felony murder, child abuse in the first degree. Both Seth and Tatiana sat stone-faced as they were told they would likely spend the rest of their lives behind bars. Their beliefs had taken precedence over the life of their child, and now they would pay the ultimate price.
During his sentencing in court, Stone made an apology, yet wouldn't take responsibility, blaming his escapade on drugs. He asked the judge to give him a break.
I pray you leave me time to start a family of my own with my beautiful wife.
That didn't happen. Stone was sentenced to 160 years in prison.
Out in Colorado, a wild and dangerous scene unfolded with Ryan Stone at the center. His crime spree covered 5 counties and was captured live by a news helicopter. It began with carjackings, 3 in total, one of which had a 4-year-old child still inside. Stone sped off with police in pursuit, at times going over 100 miles per hour. He clipped a state trooper trying to deploy stop sticks, leaving the officers seriously injured. Then he ditched the stolen vehicle, pulled another driver from their car, and took off again. Eventually, the chase ended with Stone running on foot, slipping on ice, and being cornered in a parking lot. He surrendered as officers closed in. In jail, Stone made calls bragging about making international headlines, laughing about being seen on the news in the UK and Australia. He even said he wanted to get paid for the video footage. But when he stood in court, he blamed his behavior on drug withdrawal and emotional stress, trying to downplay his boasts. It didn't work. He was found guilty on 18 charges, including attempted manslaughter, child abuse, and assault. His sentence was 160 years in prison. His fame had turned into a life sentence.
So rarely does one story so capture, the public sensibilities and the public curiosity as a story like this. From the very beginning, because it was so violent, because it was so unexpected, so unpredictable, and because it was so out of the ordinary.
Then there was Esteban Carpio, whose case erupted in Rhode Island after a brutal act of violence inside a police interview room. He was being questioned for stabbing an 85-year-old woman when one of the detectives stepped out to get him water. Left alone with Sergeant James Allen, Carpio suddenly seized the officer's gun and shot him twice, killing him. He jumped out of a 3rd-story window and tried to escape, but was caught within 45 minutes. When he appeared in court, he wore a facial restraint mask to prevent spitting or biting, and his face was swollen and bruised. His family erupted, screaming that he was a victim of police brutality and that he was mentally ill and needed help. The FBI investigated and found that his injuries came from his leap and the violent struggle with police during his arrest. Carpio offered little resistance in court beyond a brief claim of innocence. Ultimately, he was sentenced to life without parole.
Party's ready on the state of Texas versus Janine Jones.
In a Bexar County courtroom, the woman once dubbed the Angel of Death finally admitted to murder. Janine Jones pleaded guilty to the 1981 murder of Joshua Sawyer. Her sentence is life in prison.
In another case that stunned the nation, a former nurse named Janine Jones returned to the courtroom decades after her initial crimes had rocked Texas in the 1980s. She had been suspected of murdering multiple children under her care, though only one conviction had stuck. Now, years later, advances in forensic science brought new evidence to light. Families that had buried their children with unanswered questions finally heard confirmation of their worst fears. Janine had used injections to hasten the deaths of children she was supposed to be caring for, driven by a twisted need for attention or control. She stood before the court once again, now older, grayer, but still the central figure in a web of suffering. The judge sentenced her to life in prison, ensuring she would never harm another child. The grief in the room was sharp, yet there was a small, long-awaited peace for the families who had waited decades to hear the truth.
During that time, Magnotta in the prisoner's box, wearing handcuffs and shackles, appeared to dab at his eyes several times. He also kept his hand by his mouth as though feeling discomfort. The judge also had difficulty at times looking away and watching Magnotta. It was when the courtroom was being cleared for the lunch break that Magnotta collapsed. As people were walking into the hall, Magnotta stood, took a couple of steps, and appeared to fall. After lunch, the court was told the accused would not be returning, and the judge adjourned until tomorrow.
And then there was the bizarre and terrifying case of Luca Magnotta, a Canadian man whose crimes reach far beyond borders thanks to the internet. What began as disturbing videos of animal cruelty escalated into one of the most chilling murders ever shared online. Magnotta filmed himself murdering an international student, Jun Lin, and mailed parts of his body to Canadian political parties. The international manhunt that followed led to his arrest in Germany, where he had fled. In court, he showed little emotion, occasionally smirking or glancing at the press as they recorded every detail. The horror of his actions, the calculated nature of the crime, and the arrogance he displayed shocked even seasoned detectives. The court found him guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, and sentenced him to life in prison. The internet had made him infamous, but justice sealed his fate.
I agree that he should remain in custody for the remainder of his life with no possibility of ever being released. And in this regard, I find that it is necessary to confine for essentially 2 life sentences, and that is to ensure that he's never released and in order to protect the public.
One last story closed the cycle of courtroom horrors, and it came from Alaska, where a young man named Brian Smith had recorded himself murdering a woman and dumping her body. His mistake? He accidentally uploaded the footage to a cloud account, and a woman who purchased the discarded phone later found the chilling video. She reported it to the police, and the trail led straight to Smith. Investigators found more evidence, including another body buried in a remote site. In court, the video footage was played behind closed doors, too disturbing for public viewing. Smith sat motionless as the court recounted the deliberate nature of his actions. His victims had been vulnerable women, marginalized and often forgotten, until their names were spoken in court and their stories were heard. The judge handed down a life sentence, locking away a man whose crimes might never have come to light if not for a digital mistake. Each of these cases revealed something terrifying about human nature, how revenge, greed, delusion, and detachment can drive people to commit unthinkable acts. Courtrooms became theaters of truth, confession, denial, and reckoning. Victims' families sobbed while defendants crumbled or stared blankly ahead, awaiting their fate. Some showed remorse, others only regret that they'd been caught. Justice, though slow and imperfect, came for each of them. And with every verdict, every sentence, the gavel fell not just on one person, but on entire stories, on the loss of innocence, the collapse of trust, and the weight of lives forever altered.